Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much. And as Thomas Patrick Conroy, it's great to be here just a couple of days after St. Patrick's Day in a great Irish bar. So I want to say thank you for hosting it here. I am Tom Conroy. I do live in Wayland, state rep there. As just stated, my 4 daughters, 3 of whom are triplets. They're seniors in the Wayland High School, and if anybody can help me figure out how we're going to pay for college, I'd love to see you and talk to you offline afterwards. I am running for state treasurer because I fundamentally believe that Massachusetts should be a commonwealth of equal opportunity, a place where people who are working hard and playing by the rules have an equal chance to succeed, to move up and move ahead. Now, our economy has changed over the course of the past 30 or 40 years, and it's a lot more difficult for folks to do that. Those middle-class jobs that used to be there aren't there anymore. Folks are really struggling on the margins to try to hold on to the middle-class living that they've had, hold on to their houses, pay for college educations, pay for rising healthcare costs. We need to address this issue of economic justice and economic mobility. That's what I want to do as your next state treasurer. I want to use the tools and the authority of that office to open up educational and job opportunities for everyone in Massachusetts. This is good economics. It's going to help grow the economy. It's good for working families, but it's also very personal to me because, see, when I was a young kid, my dad came back from Vietnam. And he came back to a house that was mortgaged to the hilt. He had never seen. It was a small little dumpy ranch house. There were 5 of us boys under the age of 8 bouncing off the walls and a wife he hadn't seen in 13 months who desperately needed a break. But Dad couldn't give her a break because he didn't have a job, he didn't have any income, and he didn't have any savings. But through hard work and a bunch of loans from local banks, Mom and Dad made it work. And they afforded me, by taking out a whole bunch of government student loans, an opportunity to get an Ivy League education. And I used that education to address these very principles of economic justice over the course of my career. You heard about the refugee work that I did in Southeast Asia and Haiti, giving people an opportunity for a better life. What I did in the private sector was take best financial practices and help businesses grow and create new jobs, but I also did some work with state agencies and municipalities, including the Boston Public School System, helping them grow their budgets in a way that allowed them to hire, for example, more social workers or more teachers so that we could offer the kind of government services everybody wants and deserves. I have also done this kind of work, sound, prudent, smart financial management in the public sector as a state rep over the course of the past 8 years. I'm the author of 3 pieces of legislation that have become law, that have enhanced our credit rating, saved taxpayers millions of dollars each year by lowering our borrowing costs. I've authored a welfare to work bill that invests in single mothers particularly so that they have the kind of training and education they need, and as important, the kind of child care assistance they need for their kids so that they know when they're at work their child is being well cared for. I am now the author of the minimum wage bill in the House of Representatives. We are going to be taking this up and reporting it out favorably in the committee that I chair tomorrow afternoon. I'm very proud of this. We are going to have, I believe and I hope, the highest minimum wage in the country by the end of this year. We're going to have legislation in place that puts Massachusetts on a path towards helping working families across this Commonwealth get more money so that they can put food on their table and keep roofs over their heads. So these are the kind of ideas, principles, approaches, values that I am bringing as your next treasurer. I ask for your support. My name is Tom Conroy. I have triplets, and I'm running for treasurer. And thank you all very much. Sure. So as some folks know, the student loan problem throughout the Commonwealth and indeed across the country is enormous. $1.2 trillion worth of debt families and students are facing right now trying to pay off student loans. It's the second largest debt in the entire country, mortgage debt being being number 1. The treasurer, few people realize, has access to a trust fund of student loans that helps STEM major students, science, technology, engineering, and math students, who have gone through the UMass system to stay in Massachusetts and get some relief on those loans through grants or other kinds of financing mechanisms so that they can continue to study and not be laden down with debt for decades to come. I want to greatly expand that program because the problem is so enormous with student debt all across this Commonwealth. I have asked in the budget for more money for that fund. I have some ideas on how to capitalize it, even without using budget authority. I want to bring some of those ideas into the Treasurer's office so that we can ensure that every aspiring student and scholar in this Commonwealth who wants to go to college and get the kind of skills that they need to get into a good middle-class job can do so without financial barriers in their place. That's what I hope to do as your next treasurer. I have been a very passionate advocate of ending violence through guns throughout certainly this city and throughout the entire Commonwealth. And I've been advocating and working with all sorts of different groups outside of my traditional role as a state rep, trying to galvanize support and energy around this effort. It started before Newtown, and certainly it got a big boost of momentum when Newtown, that tragedy, occurred. And I am going to be the author, whenever that bill comes to the floor for gun reform in the House of Representatives this spring, I am going to author a one gun a month purchasing amendment to ensure that gun trafficking is slowed, if not stopped, here in this Commonwealth. It is ruining our neighborhoods, particularly here in Boston, but in other cities around the Commonwealth. We've got too many firearms floating around that end up in the wrong hands. I want to bring an end to that. I'm going to advocate very strongly and get a lot of co-sponsors on this amendment. And quite frankly, folks, if one gun a month doesn't pass, maybe it's 3 gun a month. Maybe it's 5 guns a month. But we've got to bring an end to this purchasing of 50, 100 guns in a single setting. Where somebody gets in a van out, somewhere across the Commonwealth and drives into Boston and open up the back of that van at 2 o'clock in the morning and starts selling guns to everybody in the street for cash and illegally. Cutting down that kind of trafficking is a big passion of mine. So thank you for the question. So 3 questions there. I'll see if I can order them sequentially. I was in favor of a $1.9+ billion tax increase in our Commonwealth. I saw the initial reaction to the governor's proposal by the leadership and others in the House and sensed that it wasn't getting the kind of support that the governor wanted. And I thought, well, the principles and the idea and the amount I liked, so maybe I can craft something slightly differently. So, for example, I put in a significant carbon tax bill that I had authored earlier in the session that I think is a great way to raise revenue, help the environment, invest more in clean technology, invest more in public transportation, but also, for example, raise $400 million. I offered a couple of other ideas within this $1.9 billion package that I thought were worthy of support and potentially viable for passage in the House. And I walked this series of spreadsheets, quite frankly, to the Speaker's office, and the Majority Leader's office, and the Ways and Means Chair's office, and made the pitch and said, we've got a whole bunch of needs out here. Public transportation needs, unfunded mandates around public education, special ed, and Chapter 70 as well. We've got water infrastructure challenges that we need to address all throughout this Commonwealth. So I have been advocating with the Chairman of Ways and Means and the Speaker over the course of the past several years on the fact that we are not generating enough revenue to pay for our unfunded liabilities, but also for all those prudent return on investment proposals and initiatives out there that are going to make our economy in Massachusetts stronger economically today, but also financially secure for the next several generations. Those are the kind of investments I want to continue to advocate for as the treasurer. I'm going to be, if I'm fortunate enough to get all of your support, watching all the revenue and the expenditures go out the door. And I'm going to be out there on the front lines talking to the bond market, trying to get more capital expenditure capacity so that we can fix all of our broken infrastructure. I want to do that at the same time that I'm advocating for more revenue so that will actually help our borrowing process as well. It's a great bill, and it's worthy of talking. And I've already started to build some bridges between the environmental community, which would love to see something like this go forward, but they're a little skeptical about it because they think, well, the business community will hate it and they'll kill it. Well, I'm talking to the business community too. I'm using my 16 years of experience in the business community in financial services and in management consulting, where I learned how business people think, and CEOs and CFOs and everybody in the C-suite makes decisions, to appeal to them as a colleague and a business person who understands sort of the challenges that they face and say, guys and women, we can make this work for business too, as well as the environment. I'm all about win-win solutions. I'm a big supporter of the green energy and clean technology industry because it is win-win-win. I'm a big supporter of the life sciences industry too, and I applaud the governor for what he's done on that, and I was involved in help drafting that piece of legislation that became law because it saves lives. It's going to save more lives in the future. It's great for the Massachusetts economy, and there are great jobs there too. So these are the kind of industries that I support, and the carbon tax is one way to get there. And I think part of it is just getting more people like you and others around this room and around this Commonwealth starting to talk about the win-win-win aspect of this bill. Tom Friedman, I think, put 5 or 6 wins together in a New York Times op-ed column probably about 6 months ago. He just thinks this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and I happen to too. I would love to move away from the constitutional fact that we have no ability, unless we change that Constitution, to have a real progressive tax system here in Massachusetts. So, I have been advocating for a bill that could potentially pass through both chambers and get signed by the governor. That would, by manipulating a couple of ways, in good ways, create, in essence, a more progressive tax system without the need to changing that Constitution. We've got a massive and growing income disparity in this Commonwealth. Most people don't realize that we are clearly in the top 10 in terms of income equality if we compare ourselves to the other 50 states. As important, our rate of income inequality in Massachusetts is rising faster than every other state in the union except for one. So we're becoming more unequal every day than 48 other states. Very disturbing. We're becoming a land of haves and have-nots. And addressing this through a progressive tax system, I think, is a great way to go. And I want to continue to have that dialogue and hopefully get into a statewide office where I can have a louder voice on that issue. So, I focus on things like job creation and educational opportunities. So the student loan issue is one that I feel passionately about. I applaud Steve Grossman for what he's done with regard to investing Massachusetts taxpayer dollars in local banks. Those local banks will then have stronger balance sheets. They can lend more to local businesses. If Doyle's ever needs a loan, they could get a loan under the next treasurer called Tom Conroy, and that could allow this restaurant to grow and hire more people and create new jobs. On the education side, I also want to address this challenge of early education. I come at this from a principle of every child should be entering the K-12 school system on an equal footing, so that you are not disadvantaged by coming from a socioeconomic position based on your zip code, where you grow up in poverty and can't quite get the help you need when you start the K-12 system and never catch up. I want, as the next treasurer, to start building more pre-K classrooms and investing more in early education and working, for example, on all of these issues with the more than 45 colleagues of mine in the State House that have endorsed me and support me in this effort as the next treasurer, but as important, can become authors and sponsors and supporters of legislation that we work together on. A lot of people may not realize that every year the treasurer has an opportunity to craft legislation and submit that legislation to the legislature and then testify on behalf. I've got a whole bunch of colleagues who are going to support some of these ideas. The Attorney General does that. Martha Coakley's done that every year. She sends a whole list of bills that she wants passed by the legislature. I plan to do the same thing as a former legislator in the Treasurer's office and advocate on behalf of progressive taxes, carbon tax, additional funding for student loans, et cetera, et cetera. It's a great question. And as some of you folks know, certainly the gentleman who asked the question knows, the Treasurer is responsible for managing the lottery. And the lottery is something that generates $900 million roughly in profit every year on the backs of those who are mathematically challenged. They don't realize that, net, they're going to be losing money playing the lottery. And it's typically folks who don't have the kind of savings or the kind of income that we would hope. It's people that are trying to get lucky because they're already poor. And it is a tax on them, and it is regressive. You're exactly right. The balancing act here is preventing us lapsing into a system where, which was the cause for putting the lottery into government hands in the first place, which was a lot of crime and even more abuse and more tragedies and bankruptcies and family problems. So as treasurer, I want to figure out a way, you're right, to make it less regressive. I certainly, for example, don't want to offer online lottery ticket purchases because I think that's going to lead people even faster into ruin. Well, we've talked about one, which is managed. There's a bunch of different buckets and responsibilities. Fundamentally, the treasurer cuts all the paychecks for everybody in the Commonwealth, so pays state employees, collects. The revenue comes in one stream and goes out the other. The treasurer goes before the bond committee. Anytime the bond market, anytime the Commonwealth wants to borrow money, the treasurer and the governor need to work together to put together a bond and offer it to the bond market and say, we're a good risk. We need to fix our roads or fix our bridges or fix whatever municipal building or whatnot. And we want to borrow from the bond market. And you need to put your best foot forward and get the lowest possible interest rate. So you've got to have some financial background and some know-how and expertise to be a credible, quite frankly, salesperson to the bond market so that we can get the lowest possible interest rate. You manage the lottery. You manage the pension fund, $58 billion pension fund. So expertise in the financial services arena is quite relevant. A guy like me who has worked in that investment management world, I used to work at a large company. I had clients that were banks, insurance companies, mutual fund companies, investment managers. So I know some of the good folks in that industry and some of the perhaps folks that we don't want to hire to help invest our money wisely and prudently. I think that's very relevant expertise. You also, the other big chunk of responsibility the treasurer has is managing what's called the school building authority. So anytime a school district throughout the Commonwealth wants to rebuild, renovate, build anew a school building, elementary, middle, or high school, they come to the treasurer's office, which provides guidance and guidelines around project management and how to go about designing and constructing and building that, but also financing as well. And there is a fourth piece around infrastructure, water infrastructure financing too. Low interest loans to municipalities so that water infrastructure at the local level can be replaced, renovated, maintained, and rebuilt as necessary.
Not other utilities, just water.
Just water, that's correct. DPU is under the authority of quite frankly, the Attorney General and to a lesser extent the executive, the governor's office. The Department of Public Utilities, sorry. And that regulation flows through that department. So are there social justice goals that you can advance through managing the pension fund and fundamentally making decisions about which companies to invest in and which ones not to invest in? Absolutely, I want to do that. I think it makes sense to take the democratic and progressive values that I have, that the people in this room have, that most of the people in Massachusetts have, and give voice to those as an active shareholder in the equity of companies into which we are making investments, so that we can change those companies, change their behaviors. For example, put an end, hopefully, to fracking, put an end to other pollution creating businesses and research and development, help guide companies more towards investments in clean technology or life sciences, look at various labor practices. And I'm creating, as we speak, a checklist of good labor practices that I think businesses in the United States of America that we, as Commonwealth of Massachusetts citizens, invest in are following. So, for example, are they paying good wages? Are they offering good benefits? Is there workplace safety standards out there that they're following? Are they abusing any existing laws? Have they run afoul of any regulations lately? Do we need to take action here in the Commonwealth to change their behavior and make decisions about invest or not invest? Absolutely. I want to be that kind of activist treasurer. I want to help hear your voices so that we can make those kind of decisions. I was involved in the United States Congress helping craft a divestment bill from South Africa during the middle of apartheid in the mid-'80s when I worked for Senator Barbara Mikulski. When I came up to the legislature, I advocated strongly against any kind of investments in companies that were doing business with Burma, because I spent time in Southeast Asia and I helped start the first Burmese refugee resettlement system that's ever been created in this country, and we helped resettle a whole bunch of Burmese there. And Aung San Suu Kyi there was, under house arrest, and that was a repressive government, and so I advocated for that as a state rep. I advocated against investing in Iran. And I've advocated strongly for ensuring that the boards of directors at companies that we invest in have minority and women on those boards in proper proportions. So these are the kind of things that I want to do as your next treasurer, and I welcome your thoughts and ideas on ways to do that over the course of this campaign, and hopefully after January when I get sworn in. In concept, I do. I share the principles of changing the behavior, or the goals of changing the behavior of these oil companies. I start with the premise that I've got a carbon tax out there, and that will change their behavior faster than anything we can do on the divestment front. So that's sort of part of the answer number one. Part of the answer number two is, if we divest, we lose our voice. If we join a chorus of voices, and by that I mean all the treasurers of every state around the country, and let's add in all the different managers of foundation monies, the $18 billion Gates Foundation, and the Pew Foundation, and the Ford Foundation, and we get all of them together with me as the leader of that group, talking to these oil companies and gas companies and coal companies, and saying, if you don't change your behavior, we will collectively divest. That will affect change. That will get these businesses to pay attention. My fear on the $1.2 billion that we invest right here in Massachusetts in those companies, yeah, we could divest that tomorrow. And I'd be happy to talk to you more about that. But we'd lose our voice, and that equity would be purchased up the very next day by some other entity, and we will have had no effect on the behavior of that particular industry. That's my fear on that proposal. I think there's a better, more effective way to do it, and I want to lead that effort as your next treasurer around the country.
All right, that's all that we have time for. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you very much. Thank you.